Hi, I'm Dave, welcome to the channel and welcome to Pit Lane Build Part 2. Now in the first part I built 3 basic triple lit garages for magnetic racing in shell form and joined them all together. Although the roofs are all still separate. Talking of which, I need to take these off for a minute. So first job in part 2 is to prepare the base. And by that, I mean, I need to get this lined up on here. I need to mark out where I need to route out some slots for the guides for the slot cars to sit. And then I will be putting little plinths in the back that keep the rear wheels of the slot cars off the track to stop you getting flat spots when you're storing your cars in here. So there'll be little upstands. I did the same thing in my car park build and in the downstairs section of the Legends bar build, where the Legends cars sit in the little double garages. It's fairly easy to do. I just use some offcuts of magnetic racing sprue and make little blocks to sit the cars on, stick them down and hide them. And then once I've done that, I need to texture up the inside of the garage floor, which is going to be polished concrete, because the era of building that this was, it probably would have been with oily splatches all over it, but nonetheless polished concrete was how it would have started out. So I shall do that, mark it up, route it out, stick some bits down and then come back. Oh, the other thing I've got to do is drill some holes through underneath here for where I'm running my wires through, this one and this one. And then we'll come back and do some texture just on this. Okay, back again. As you can see, I've got the router out and routed my 9 slots for my guides to sit in. 2 holes here that line up with these 2 cable ducts that go through here. And all these little pieces of wood, which, as you can see from this one, they go on there. They keep the rear tyres off the deck and still allow the guide to go in there. So it doesn't look like it's quite as hovering off the ground as it might do, but it does still at least save the tyres. So it's a bit of a compromise. So I've just got to stick all of those on all the way along here. And then I will take my new airbrush that I got, you may recall that, and spray some colours onto this grey. So what am I going to do? Well, we'll start with a whole load of white, not evenly, but splodges highlighted across it. And then I've got a couple of like a light brown and a stony, middle sandstony colour. Some light grey. A pale blue. That's always quite good on here. And some yellow olive, which actually comes out quite green. So we're going to do polished concrete. Polished concrete is not grey. It's never grey. We'll start with a grey base coat. We'll add some highlights. It'll just be random stuff. But you'll see eventually. I can't show you spraying it all up because I'm going to have to do this outside, I think, because it's too big and it won't fit in my spray booth. So I'll have to do it on a fairly still day outside and then come back and show you it when it's done. But it will just be a series of oversprays of different shades of yellows, greys, whites, until I like it, and then I'll stop. So I'll be back when I've glued these on and this is a better kind of concrete texture. Okay, so I have spent some time spraying this. You'll note now that this is not grey, it's a mostly a sandy and greeny and yellowy colours sort of sprayed over the top of a grey base, so the grey's showing through, but there are tints and a slightly mottled effect to it. You'll also see if I tip it up in the light, if I get it right, that it is, there we are, look. I've sprayed it with some clear lacquer just to give it a little bit of shine, because polished concrete is shiny. So I like a bit of a backstory, as you know, when I'm doing a build. So this garage base is the base of what many years ago would have been a car dealership building, probably servicing, possibly displaying cars. It might have gone through a number of uses. The polished concrete floor, especially given the era of cars I'm thinking of, whether they were showroom cars or not, or workshop cars, would have dropped oil in various places on this concrete and stained it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an amount of that on top of all of this, using a bit more of the black airbrush paint and a brush, and I've got some water in this one just to dilute it down where I want to. And the theory is all the old road grime, all the oil that drops out of cars when they're being serviced, would probably have made kind of, so what I'm going to do is like a load of little spots like that. Doesn't need to be neat, it just needs to be a thing, and then smudge it in a little bit. And I'm going to let that dry off. Do some of the other ones while I'm here. And I'll let that dry off, and then I'll smear it about a bit, and then just get a little bit of diluted water to dilute paint, and put it over the top, and again use that to smudge it about a bit and create what would be a kind of mottled dotty pattern that would appear if a car had stood in the same place and dripped oil for a long time, or indeed several cars have ended up in the same place and dripped oil over a long period of time onto a bit of concrete. So you get a kind of a blurring and a greying. And then that will be the basis of the floor. What I'll do after that is put the carcass back on the top and just mark back on here where the corners of the rooms are and the edges, and then I can just put a dirt line round where somebody's cleaned the floor but they've never properly swept into the corners all the way around, and it's built up as grime over some years. So that's what I'm going to do. It's just going to be apply a bit of paint, let it dry, smudge it out a bit, apply a bit more, maybe some water, smudge it out a bit, and when I've got to a point where I'm happy with it, then I'll put another layer of clear lacquer just over the top, just to stop it smudging about anymore. I may even use a satin lacquer over the top of it rather than a gloss one as the final coat. We'll see what happens. Okay, so now this has dried off. A Q-tip, cotton bud, just a little bit of water. And this is water-based paint on a glossy surface. So just let that soak in for a few seconds or so. And then you can start to rub away at it with the cotton bud. So what you're trying to do is create years of somebody scrubbing oil off some concrete in not years. So it's just a wearing process. And what you might end up with is a kind of ghosted mark here. I've done a few more further along. So just trying to wear the black paint off, much like somebody would have worn off oil that had gone into the concrete just by cleaning it a lot over a long period of time. Now this is time consuming. It will take me quite a while to get all of these done. And you don't need to watch me do them all. So I'll come back in a bit when I've done the rest. Okay, so that's all of those bits of oil staining here done, as far as I can go for the time being. And it's now time to put this back on here, where it's supposed to be, and just have a quick draw around the inside corners and just mark where the doors are as well. So okay, I've got corners where the walls project through, all of that sort of thing marked, where the doors are. And now what I'm going to do is just where these edges are, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing, but I'll probably, rather than dab on, because I'm not after that kind of mottled effect, I'll probably just smear or smudge a bit of dark on, let it dry, and then try and buff the edges out. So where somebody's not quite cleaned properly into a corner, maybe I might have a little bit of masking tape stick out here where somebody might have had a cabinet for years that's been moved, those kind of things. So a bit more of that, and then I'll come back and there'll be some smudgy marks on this piece of wood. So I have finished my griming up of the floor for the time being. You can see I've got just sort of grunge in the corners and little cutout bits where things may have stood against a wall, that kind of stuff. And around the door openings there between the two units, and so on. So that is all good. Let me zoom you back out a little bit. So the next thing I want to do is work on these back walls and the interior generally before I stick this down onto the base. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to put some logos on these back walls, but I want to make it appear as if they were painted on this wall quite a long time ago, and it's kind of worn off a little bit, so it's faded out. And the way I'm going to do that is with some bits of charcoal from the barbecue that I've crushed up to make various kind of, it's very good. It's better really than pencil, I think. You get a much blacker bit of charcoal and it's really cheap. And it's the end of summer, so I've got some spare. And for that real 70s authentic feeling, a can of hairspray. Now, put the hairspray on here, then rub that into it, and then put some more hairspray over the top. It should, I hope, give me the effect I'm looking for. So I'm going to give that a go. And I've got some stencils for some logos to go on the back walls, which I cut out using my vinyl cutter. There's one here. Bit of masking tape on the front, so I shall stick those on the walls and then spray and then stencil and then remove them and hope it doesn't look terrible. We'll see how this goes. So as you will have seen in that clip, I have added a Chrysler, a Roots and a Dodge logo to the 3 garages. Now, many of you all around the world will know Chrysler and Dodge. Roots, if you're not in the UK, or even if you are in the UK and you're a bit younger, you might not know. In the 70s and the 80s, nearly every town worth its salt, I would say, had a Roots car dealership. They existed through the 70s through some of the really terrible British cars, like the Hillman Avengers and so on. And through into the 80s, where Roots became part of the Chrysler Talbot partnership and was their dealer network in the UK. Now, as I'm a bit of a Mopar guy when it comes to US stuff, but I am building a UK-based slot car diorama, I kind of wanted to get the Chrysler logo in somewhere, and a Roots garage was my way of doing that, and it's still being kind of UK based. So yeah, it's just unashamedly Mopar or no car really. Notwithstanding that, obviously one of the big features, and I'll show you later on exactly why, one of the big features of a Roots dealership garage was the fascia, which we'll get to in a little while. I need to finish off these walls first though, and the backstory goes, so this building was a Roots dealership and it fell into disuse for a while, and somebody's bought it up and they've started to use it as a building again. They haven't got the budget to clean up the inside, so it's all old and a bit derelict and grungy. But they have painted up certainly the presentable front and maybe the ends of the building and kind of freshened the building up. And beyond that, the inside they've kind of left. But obviously the health and safety man has been along. So I've got some fire exits. These are all printed out on sticky back vinyl and cut out with my vinyl cutter. So fire exit signs for over the doors. And I've got some maximum height, 2.25 meters, 7'3" inches. That is this measurement. I did measure it, scale it off, and then make those so they fit. And I've got a series of these kind of danger, keep clear things to just put around the walls in places, I suppose. On On top of that, I've got some back in the day stuff to stick on the walls. At the time, Motorquip was a company, and I thought we should probably have some brittle tools and some Champion spark plugs. And of course, this is a 70s and 80s garage that's been reopened, so there's still a Naughty Pirelli garage calendar going to be stuck on one of the walls. So I'm going to stick these on now, and then I might go concentrate on the roof for a little bit. So I'll get these done and then we'll move on. Okay, so the roof. Now, old buildings, they used to, for whatever reason, paint logos on the roofs of buildings in the past. So I have got some more stencils that I've made, and going to apply them on here. About like that, I reckon. So now we get to the tricky bit, which is the fascia along the front. Now, these Roots car dealerships had a very, very distinctive fascia, all of them. And I've got to try and recreate that. So the first thing I'm going to need here is a piece of structure that comes out as a flat roof, and then a downstand that will be the fascia that has that kind of famous blue sectioned strip along the front of it. So, not wanting to waste anything and liking as much as possible to stick to the stuff that's in the kit that's provided, I shall return to these baseboards, which when you build just one, you can stand this on, and it has slots in it to put the guys for your cars in. It's lovely. No good to me because I was using this big single base here. However, I have worked out that I think I can get my upstand and my flat roof section out of the gap that is between these lasered out cuts. And then the plan is any end sections and things that will need to come out here, I can probably get out of these bits. So I'm going to go and spend a little bit of time on the bandsaw, cutting all 3 of these into strips. And then I'm going to try and build a square flat bit for the front of this. There's no more technical term for it than that, is there? So I'll be back in a bit. Okay, so a small amount of time has, well, actually quite a large amount of time has passed. What I've got here is a mocked up fascia that runs the full length, held up at the moment with closed pegs and masking tape just as temporary fixings. I'll show you kind of what I've got going on here. So here we are. I've put an end piece on it. I don't know quite how I'm going to treat that just yet. We will get to that. Just almost for the point of my own personal visualising what I'm trying to achieve, I've just spray painted the top black so that I've kind of got a flat roof and the front fascia is white for the time being. So these will fit on here. I think I'm going to have to put in some little upstands on these trusses that will glue into here just to hold these in place. And then in terms of actual roofing material for this, just a bit of 1200 grit sandpaper, which looks like roofing felt once you put it down. I've done it other places, but this can go in here and slip just under the edges of these tiles, which will give me a nice neat edge across here. And I can lip it down over the front of this wherever I need to, stick those down onto there. Now, this is where we get to how am I going to do that fascia with the squares on the front along here. And that, he says, rounding up a series of videos quite nicely, is why I bought that vac former in the first place. Because obviously these are big, so you can't use a small vac former. If you haven't seen it, there is a video for it on this channel where I did a rough thing and actually vac formed over one of these clothes pegs as an example. So I've been using this. What I did was I 3D printed myself out a little shape of some squares with the grooves in between to a depth, and that is half the length of one of these and about the right height. And so what I've been doing is putting a piece of acetate sheet in there, putting that down on there, heating it up, slamming it down over the top and using the vacuum cleaner to pull a vacuum down. And I have ended up with things that look like this. So what you end up with, although you can't really see it here, maybe you can in this light, is an impression of this shape with all of this vacuum formed around it. And I have got 1, 2, 3, 4. And what you do when you've finished, let me show you, is you get this, you lay it on something flat, and you cut around it like this. You end up with little ones like these that you probably also can't see unless I get them in the right light. Where are we? There we are. And then these will stick on the front of here. And they're backlit, although very faintly, because it was the 70s and the 80s. So I should probably put some EL wire or something in behind here. Paint these blue, but not too heavy, with some white lettering, again, which I'll stencil out like I did for all the other stencils using my vinyl cutter. And that's the plan, to see if I can then apply these onto here and have a Roots dealership front facade all the way along with, I'll come up with a garage name and put it across the front in that style. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but we'll get there when we get there. So, things to do first. Stick these down onto these in the right place so they all line up neatly. And then I'll do a bit of painting. I've got a couple of test shots of these that didn't quite work out that I can use for working out how I'm going to do a paint technique to get paint to stick to quite shiny plastic. I might try and rub that down a little bit. We'll see how we go. And yeah, onwards. Okay, back again with some results for you. Now, first off, these are all now glued on properly. I just put a couple of pieces in along there, so they're glued to the truss and glued here, and that's lovely. So these now fit together, and they are a nice linear fascia all the way along. So, to the fascia. I've been doing some experiments, starting with the great question of how do you get paint to stick to that shiny vac form plastic? Well, the first thing I thought I'd try and do was sand it with some wet and dry, just to rough it up so it went slightly opaque, and then sprayed it with some paint. As you can see, that's rubbish. It didn't really work. So I thought, oh, what else shall I try? And I remembered that hairspray from before when I did the other stuff with the smudgy charcoal. So I sprayed some of it onto this, left it to dry for 12 hours or so, and then sprayed some white primer on it, and then applied some decals. I've got a full final set of decals all printed out here that you can't really see because it's white on white, but I have, which will go along here. Some of my test shots, therefore, where did we go to start with? Here to start with. So this was the first one with the hairspray. I used a reject one. With the hairspray, then the mask, then peel it off, blue, and peel it off. This is the wrong blue, and the font was too big, so I tried again with a slightly skinnier font and a slightly darker blue, but not really. Still wasn't happy with it. So I skinnied it down even more and used a different blue. And I'm really quite happy with this. This, for anyone who remembers a Roots car dealership frontage, this is going to work. So the method is get the blank piece of vac form plastic, spray it with this, let it dry 24 hours, spray both sides, then apply the decals to the front and spray the inside white, the outside blue, let it dry and peel the decals off. And that's what I've got to do 6 times for 30 lots of squares all the way across here. It's going to take a while. Okay, let me show you where I've got to with this. So the first thing I did was took an extra row of these slates which I had left and stuck it down along there, face down, just so I've got a lip of an edge along that front. And I have put in one piece of 1200 grit wet and dry just in there and stuck it down just to show you. The other piece will go on here. It should tuck underneath. There we go. And I can stick that down and lap it around the ends and everything. Talking of the end, more of these just to create an edge. And then what I did was I took these, which I'm so glad they came out okay. I was really worried I was going to have to, you know, make them all again. If I ruined it, it was 4 days repetitive work getting back to where I'm at now with these. So I'm glad these worked out. I put this in here, pushed it up against this top edge, and then I've raided the magnetic racing sprues again for loads of bits of stick and stuck a load of them along the bottom there, and that means that that will sit snugly in there, and this one, he says, will fit in there. And then that's the start of a Roots dealership fascia, or indeed any period Chrysler dealership in the USA or probably anywhere in the world. So yes, that's where I'm going with that. Before I put these in, fix them in permanently, which I will do just with some canopy glue really around the edges just to gloop them in. But before I do that, I have got, you know, and I've got 3 of everything here again. Another EL wire light rope, which is about 1 metre long, which will get me 3 times along here. So I shall drill a hole, feed the wire through, and then I'll find somewhere, you know, up inside here, probably here somewhere, to stick that down. And then again, that wire can go out and into the great wide world, along with this one for these lights that are in here. So this will then create me 3 strips of white light along the front of here. But I did a little bit of a test, and they do shine through quite brightly. So what I might do is stick a load of this down and then maybe run some of this thin white masking tape over the top of it to sort of work like a diffuser, just to take some of the sharpness out of the light that will come through on these. I mean, it's not going to be very bright, but it's also going to be harsh lines unless I find a way of diffusing it out. So onwards and upwards, I've got to do all of this twice more and then fit these, and I guess I'll be back when I've got this in and I'm working out how I'm going to do diffuse light. So onwards and upwards again. And so here I am back again with all the roofs, roofing felted, and EL wires glued to the front in 3 runs on all of them, and a little lip at the bottom which allows those all to clip in as they should. And I will just show you If I plug the top one in, you won't see much until I switch the lights off. But you get the idea there. That's kind of bright and harsh. Now the other lights in the second one, which has got the fascia on it, I can show you. Now this one has an extra insert in it behind this plastic in front of the air wire, and this one doesn't. Let me just show you. So you can see here the air wire does sort of stick out too much. It's too pronounced, it's too obvious. But this is more diffused. So this is the way I'm going to go. Now, which magical thing is it that I used as a diffuser? Well, just a bit of A4 photocopier paper cut into a strip. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. So I am now going to fix these in here, fix these to here, bed them in with some canopy glue because it doesn't attack anything and it dries clear. So I'll just run a bead of that sort of all the way around the edge, stick these in and leave them for ages so they dry, and do it to all three of these. And then I think for the time being, this video is going along quite a long while now. I think put the fascia in, show you it all in place, and we'll have that as the finale for this video, and then we'll have a part 3 another time. So I'll get on with this, and then we'll put it back together, and we'll have the kind of great illumination shot at the end. Back soon. And so then there we are. For now, this is complete for part 2. I'll give you a little bit of a slow walk past, put some brand appropriate cars in some of the bays. And of course, not forgetting on the top here. Now this brick wall behind here, that'll be getting some treatment in part 3, as will this end. And I think we might try and do some doors in part 3 as well. I don't know when part 3 will be yet. Obviously, there's a lot of other things coming up on this channel as well. So I guess the last thing you need is a few nice moody shots of it in the dark. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch one of my videos. If you liked it, you will find a button specifically for that. Please subscribe to the channel, it's free and it really does help. And if you hit the bell, you'll get a notification the next time I post a video.